Okay, my name is Alyson Kennedy. I'm the Socialist Workers' Party candidate for President of the United States.
And what made you decide to run for President of the United States?
Well, I'm running in this election to represent the views of the Socialist Workers' Party, which is a working class party. And we believe that the only way we're going to change things in the United States and in the world is by working people standing up and fighting for our rights, fighting for better conditions on the job, fighting for workers' control of production, fighting to demand that we need jobs in this country. We need to fight for a massive public works program. And it's through these kinds of fights that we will be able to gain the confidence to build a much more powerful movement, a revolutionary movement that can take political power out of the hands of the wealthy capitalists and create a society that meets the needs of the majority.
You talked about focusing on the working class, and that's something that in politics really doesn't exist in the Republicans or Democrats. They listen to their donors. What do the working class people tell you that they need?
Well, I think. Well, one example, myself and my running mate Malcolm Jarrett, he's running for vice president. We've been campaigning all over the United States. And one of the places that we went to recently was Bath, Maine, where 4,300 workers are on strike. And they're on strike because this company wants the right to bring in contract workers, non-union contract workers. They want the right to basically gut seniority rights, which in these workers' minds would be like working without a union. And I think they're absolutely right about that. And these workers are standing up. It's an important strike, and I urge your listeners to check out this, how you can support this strike by going online to the IAM local S6 website, and it will tell you how to send donations, how to contribute to this strike. They need all the solidarity that they can get.
So in this country, socialism is used as an insult all the time. Democrats are called socialists all the time, even though they're not. How do you explain socialism to people as you're traveling around the country trying to pitch yourself?
Well, what we're talking about is the idea that working people, along with our allies, working farmers and other working people throughout society, would run this country. We would be the government. We would run the factories. We would use all the wealth that we create through our labor. That wealth is taken from us by the owners of the places that we work for, and they make super profits out of it. But little of it goes back into society. And we want to use that wealth to really begin to solve the severe problems that humanity is facing, one of which we're living through right now, and that's the coronavirus pandemic.
Yeah, at the federal level, it seems like our response to the coronavirus has been just a complete failure. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's because the United States is the most powerful imperialist power in the world. It's a capitalist country. They do everything from the standpoint of profit, profit, profit. That's why there weren't enough hospitals. That's why there's not enough hospital beds. That's why 42% of all the deaths from coronavirus are people in nursing homes. It's why you see factories after factory that have very high infection rates. There's a factory in Los Angeles, American Apparel, where out of 1,800 workers, 300 tested positive, 4 deaths. Those workers had to stand up and fight the bosses for safety in that factory to defend their lives really against coronavirus. And it's this kind of system that I think is more and more apparent to working people. It doesn't work for the majority of people in the world. There's something wrong with the society. It's supposed to be the wealthiest country in the world, but yet it's a country that has one of the highest infection rates from coronavirus and the highest death rate. There's something not right with a society like this. And what's not right is that this is a class-divided society. You have the capitalist class, and you have the working class, and you have a privileged middle class in the middle of this, which is getting less and less privileged, by the way. It's also very much affected by this crisis. But it's because we have these class divisions in this society, and you have a government that represents the interests of the wealthy class and protects their relations of their ability to make profit off of our labor. That's the problem that we face. And we have to make a fundamental change to change this. We have to make a revolution in this country, our party believes.
Yeah, that often is kind of like a big divide among socialists, is this idea of, can things be changed incrementally, or do we need radical, fast changes? Where do you stand on that?
Well, I'm not for radical fast change, actually. That's what we're seeing play out in Portland right now, by the way. I think I want to put our party on record that we condemn the bringing in of Homeland Security into Portland or any other city in the United States. These are the Border Patrol cops that are being brought into Portland. These are the same Border Patrol cops that deport our brothers and sisters. That's why our party supports amnesty for all undocumented workers. We're against the raids and deportations. We're against the fact that these workers are not allowed driver's license. But we condemn this. We also condemn the brutal tear gassing of mothers who went to Portland trying to stop the young people that have been involved in these protests from getting attacked from these federal agents. But at the same time, I want to go on record by saying that we do not support the methods of ultra radicals that loot and exercise violence. This is very, very dangerous, very dangerous. We have to continue building a powerful working class-led movement against police brutality. You know, the cops that killed George Floyd have still not gone to trial. They've been charged, but the trial is yet to be had. And we have to keep these protests up. The cops that killed Breonna Taylor haven't even been charged yet. We have to keep these protests up, and they have to be disciplined. That's why it's important to have the working class and the unions involved in these protests, because they will be disciplined. You won't see the violence and the looting. That's very dangerous.
What are some of the other issues that you think are facing the United States that we can actually handle in the next administration?
Well, one thing I just want to explain, one of the reasons I'm here in Seattle is to be part of a fight that our party is waging to get Alyson Kennedy running for President of the United States, myself, and Malcolm Jarrett, who's our vice presidential candidate, on the ballot in this state. We've been on the ballot, the Socialist Workers' Party, in presidential elections since 1948. I was on the ballot last year in Washington State. We believe our party should have the right, not last year, 2016. Our party was on the ballot for president and vice president. The state made adjustments in the gubernatorial election this year because of coronavirus. We think they need to make the same adjustment for the presidential candidates to be able to get on the ballot. We're doing everything we can to get on the ballot. We're doing the seeking signatures on petitions, but it's very difficult to do given coronavirus. But we're going to do this. We're going to fight this. We think it's very important that working people have a voice in this election, and that's why we think that our right to be on the ballot is so important. But my running mate actually is now in Vermont, campaigning in Vermont, and we just heard yesterday that we have been certified for ballot status in Vermont. That state made adjustments because of coronavirus and loosened up the requirements. We're going to be on the ballot in Louisiana and Colorado. So we for sure want to be on the ballot in Washington State.
Yeah, and how can people help with that?
Well, they can help by, on Saturday, we urge your listeners to go down to the Socialist Workers Party campaign headquarters, where there'll be a convention being held. It'll take place all day long, to sign a petition to help get us on the ballot. Or if you want us to email you a petition or even bring it to your house, you can contact us at swpseattle@gmail.com or call the campaign office at 206-323-1755. We also urge your listeners to invite our candidates to speak at union meetings or organizations, or if you'd like to hold a small gathering in your house to hear the candidates' views, you're more than welcome to contact us about that as well.
You touched on it a little bit, but what has it been like for you personally running a presidential campaign during this pandemic? It's got to be pretty unusual.
Well, it's unusual, but what I think is really wonderful is, the first place I went to when we launched the campaign, I went out to Arizona to walk the picket line with copper miners that began a strike against ASARCO, which is one of the largest copper mining outfits in the world. And they started this strike last October. And I went out there right at the beginning of the election campaign to walk the picket line with them and to give solidarity. And, they maintained these picket lines throughout this pandemic. They stood up to this, and because they stood up to ASARCO, they have the union intact. They have ended the strike now, but they're going to be going back to work with the union. ASARCO was really after breaking the union. That's what they really wanted in this strike. Why else would you refuse to negotiate for over almost 9 months if that's not what you're trying to go for? But I think what the ASARCO strikers did is very important. I really salute their fight, and I think it's what the bath workers are facing a similar thing in Maine, and I urge your listeners to support them as well. But that's what's been so interesting about campaigning during this pandemic, is because working people are trying to figure out how within this they can maintain our existence, our lives. Early, when this pandemic first began, our party raised the importance of workers getting back to work as a very important thing, because without being at work, you can't fight to change things. You can't fight for better working conditions. You can't fight for workers' control on the job to make sure you have safety and all the protections you need in regards to coronavirus. You can't fight to change this society, which I think this coronavirus has just totally showed that we have to change the kind of society we live in.
Yeah, it seems like people have, well, in my personal opinion, people have really lost faith in capitalism since 2008 and just keeps on getting worse and worse and worse. Do you see that as you go around?
Right. I think we do see it, but you know what? I think a lot of working people are questioning the kind of society we live in, for sure. But I think what we've got to begin to see is we can change things, that working people are capable of changing things. We are capable of having a different kind of society, of being the government, of running things in this country. That's what we have yet to really, I think, internalize and really see that we can change things in this country. That's why these fights on the job are so important. That's why these strikes are so important. That's why the unprecedented explosion of protests around police brutality that we just went through are so important. Because it's through these kinds of things you begin to see, yes, we can change things. We are capable. We're not the deplorables that the Democratic Party and the politicians call us. We're not the worthless working people that are incapable of doing anything. But when we stand up and fight, we show that we are human beings, that we can make a difference for our class and for the world.
So I've had a number of Republicans on, and they will frequently refer to the Democratic Party as being communist or socialist. I take it you yourself are a socialist. Why aren't you a Democrat, and why aren't Democrats socialists actually?
Okay. Well, the reason I'm not a Democrat is, I'll give you one really quick example. When I was in high school, I supported different Democrats that claimed that they were against the Vietnam War. Then they got elected and did nothing to end the Vietnam War. In fact, voted for things, for bills to increase the war, to increase war spending, to back what the U.S. government was doing in Vietnam. And it was through that I began to see that both the Democratic and Republican parties are not there to represent working people. They're there to defend the wealth and the profits of the really rich in this country. Right now, we have a situation in the United States where you've got, Donald Trump running for president of the Republican Party, who, refuses to do anything about coronavirus, to take it seriously in any way, shape, or form. Then on the other hand, you've got Joe Biden, who has been buried in the basement throughout this crisis. But the Democratic Party right now, I believe, is being influenced very strongly by these middle-class layers in society, Democrats and radicals who have a radical agenda. They talk about things like defunding the police, canceling rents, and other things like this. And it's having a big impact on Biden. He's starting to adopt some of these programs. He had a big meeting recently and included the woman in Congress, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, who's behind this Green New Deal. He actually had a meeting with her, and he wants to incorporate a lot of that in the Democratic Party program when he runs as he's running for president. But this is no way forward. These are simply reform schemas, and they're going to do nothing to change the class relations in this society that really call the shots. The police are there to protect the private property of the rich. They're there to protect the power of the rich and to met out punishment to working people. And the only way to end this kind of setup is by getting rid of the system that benefits from this. That's why the only way we're ultimately going to end police brutality is through working people running this country and us dealing with these questions ourselves. We can push the cops back. You can definitely do that. We're showing that we've done that through these unprecedented protests. We got the cops charged that killed George Floyd. We're still fighting for that in Louisville. The cop that killed Rayshard Brooks in Atlanta has been charged, and they were charged rapidly. So we are capable of pushing the cops back and putting cops in jail that kill workers. But the only way we're going to get rid of the police as an institution is when we build a different kind of society.
So the United States is an imperialist power. We have bases all around the world, and we spend just an insane amount of money on the military. Do you have any thoughts about what we could do to change that?
Well, I oppose the U.S. military. The military is used to protect the right of U.S. imperialism to pillage and plunder the world. And so I oppose the U.S. military, and it's used against our fellow brothers and sisters internationally. There's one country in the world that's a real example for working people today, and that's Cuba. Cuba is a country that has coronavirus under control. It's the only country in the world that has done this. You can just see this for example, in Cuba, as of today, there's been 87 deaths in Cuba from coronavirus. In the United States, it's almost 140,000 people have died of coronavirus. In Cuba, that's 0.8 people have died per 100,000 people. In the United States, it's 42 per 100,000 people. Now, why is that? Well, there's one simple reason. Cuba has a workers' and farmers' government. They made a revolution in Cuba. Healthcare is not done for private profit. They have a true public health system there. It's also a country that does not have police brutality. They don't have the police killings that we have in the United States. In Cuba, one of the first acts of the Cuban government and Fidel Castro, after they took power in 1959, was to end the police in Cuba. That was totally controlled by a ruthless dictator in Cuba, Batista. But it's that we have to think about doing in this country to really begin to make the fundamental changes we need in the world today.
So before we go, do you have any final thoughts about why people should be supporting your campaign?
Well, another thing that we're raising in our election campaign is the need. We have two slogans on our campaign button. One is workers control the production on the job, which I talked about earlier. And another campaign proposal is to build a labor party that would be not connected in whatever form with the Democratic and Republican parties. It would be made up of working people and our allies. And it would be a party that would mobilize to fight for the rights of working people. It wouldn't be an electoral arm just to get working people elected, but it would be a party that would mobilize working people to fight and back each other's struggles. And we also support 30 hours of work for 40 hours pay. We think that's crucial right now when you think of the massive number of people that are unemployed and out of work right now. And then the many of us that are working right now are getting our hours cut or our wages cut. So we have to fight for 30 hours of work for 40 hours of pay at wages that we can live on. The other thing I'd like to encourage your listeners to do is to go online and check out themilitant.com. It's the weekly newspaper of the Socialist Workers' Party. You can subscribe to it for just $5. You can get a subscription online. I also urge you to contact the Socialist Workers' Party in Seattle at swpseattle@gmail.com and support our fight to get our candidates on the ballot, myself, Alyson Kennedy, and Malcolm Jarrett, and urge you to come to our campaign headquarters on Saturday to sign a petition to help ensure that we have a working class voice on the ballot in this election in Washington State.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much.